Welcome to Crime, Time, Grime. Decertification Documents 1, Officer Desmond Mills Jr., the Tyre Nichols case. Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for the purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education and research. This video contains the creator's opinions, comments, and allegations for the purpose of education, comment, entertainment, and criticism. It is not to be misconstrued as facts. In January, documents were sent to the Tennessee Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission, as part of its process of decertifying the officers involved in the beating death of Tyre Nichols, so that the officers cannot work again in the state of Tennessee. On Tuesday, February 7, 2023, the decertification documents were released publicly. I've included all the decertification documents in this video and we will discuss them. There are 104 pages in total, in the following order. Desmond Mills Jr., pages 1 to 18. Emmett Martin III, pages 19 to 40. Tadarius Bean, pages 41 to 60. Demetrius Haley, pages 61 to 81. Justin Smith, pages 82 to 104. We will go in order accordingly. Many of the documents are formalities, but they are included for documentation. Desmond Mills Jr., pages 1 to 18. Page 1 is a change of status document. It places Desmond Mills Jr. on administrative leave as of January 8, 2023. Page 2 is a change of status document. It terminates Desmond Mills Jr.'s employment on January 20, 2023. Page 3 is a decertification request document, dated January 25, 2023. Page 4 is a statement of charges document, dated January 14, 2023. The document states that Desmond Mills Jr., rank, Police Officer 2, assignment, OCU Scorpion Unit is terminated for personal conduct, neglect of duty, and excessive force, unnecessary force. And 40-day swap, for violating the body cam regulations. I believe swap stands for suspension without pay. You can read more about this regulation on page 6. On January 14, 2023, you and your partners apprehended a fleeing nonviolent individual at Castle Gate Lane and Bear Creek Cove. After the subject was placed in custody, and other officers were captured on body-worn camera making multiple unprofessional comments, laughing, and bragging about your involvement. Your conversation and lack of concern for the injured subject was witnessed by a civilian who took photographs and cell phone video. The civilian's viewpoint was you and your partners left the injured subject lying on the ground, handcuffed, and unattended. When you changed location to speak with the victim's mother, you and the supervisor did not obtain her contact information or refused to provide an accurate account of her son's encounter with police or his condition. The report of the victim's death was broadcasted on both local and national media sites. The release of any digital evidence of you and your partner's actions will shed a bad light on the department and city of Memphis. Your on-duty conduct was unjustly, blatantly unprofessional and unbecoming for a sworn public servant. Your actions place you in violation of DR 104 personal conduct. We learn a couple of things from this document that we didn't previously know. 1. We learned there was a civilian witness. That is major. Also, the civilian witness took photos and cell phone video. I'm sure this witness will be testifying at the officer's murder trials. 2. We learned that Officer Desmond Mills Jr. was one of the officers that went to Tyre's mother's home after the beating. So, he was one of the officers that lied to Rovon Wells, Tyre's mother. He told her Tyre was arrested for DUI and that he went to the hospital because the police pepper sprayed him. Desmond Mills Jr. failed to tell her that he beat her son with a baton. Further, according to Mrs. Wells, They told her she could not go to the hospital because Tyre was under arrest. Page 5. DR 104, Personal Conduct Compliance Regulation starts at the bottom of page 4 and continues on page 5. Page 5, also, includes DR 120, Neglect of Duty, and DR 301, Excessive Force, Unnecessary Force Compliance Regulations. Page 6. DR 301, Excessive Force, Unnecessary Force Compliance Regulations continues on page 6. Page 6, also, includes DR 101 Compliance with Regulations. Page 7. DR 101 Compliance with Regulations continues on page 7. Page 7, also, includes OCU procedures. Page 8 is the Statement of Charges document, signatures page. Page 9 is an administrative summons. Dated January 14, 2023. It states: you used excessive and unnecessary force to apprehend a nonviolent subject, following a traffic stop where the person sustained critical injuries and later expired. Your on-duty conduct was unbecoming, and you neglected your duty to render aid, and provide viable details to the emergency medical personnel. You failed to record the event in its entirety, on your body-worn camera uninterrupted. Page 10 is a hearing summary form. Dated January 20, 2023. It states: Statement of Hearing Officer. On Friday, January 20, 2023, at 1000 hours, an administrative hearing was conducted for Officer Desmond Mills Junior, number 13678, resulting from a statement of charges issued to Officer Mills Junior, by the ISB for violations of DR 104 Personal Conduct, DR 120 Neglect of Duty, DR 301 Excessive Force, Unnecessary Force, and DR 101 Compliance with Regulations, to wit, BWC. Action ordered. DR 104 Personal Conduct, sustained and termination is ordered. DR 120 Neglect of Duty, sustained and termination is ordered. DR 301 Excessive Force, Unnecessary Force, sustained and termination is ordered. DR 101 Compliance with Regulations, to wit, BWC, sustained, and a 40-day suspension is ordered. The document is checked. Appeal, will not. Grievance, will. And signed by employee Mills. Page 11 is a continuance of page 10, the hearing summary form. It states: hearing participants: Officer Desmond Mills Jr., Lieutenant Jessica Cage Rosario, MPA, and Deputy Chief M. Hardy, Hearing Officer. Prior to this hearing, Officer Desmond Mills Jr. had been made aware of the pending charges by being served an administrative summons on January 16, 2023, which he did sign acknowledging receipt and was provided with a copy. The charges stem from a complaint regarding allegations that on January 7, 2023, you and your partners apprehended a fleeing nonviolent individual, at Castle Gate Lane and Bear Creek Cove. After the subject was placed in custody, you and other officers were captured on body-worn camera, making multiple unprofessional comments, laughing, bragging about your involvement. Your conversation and lack of concern for the injured subject was witnessed by a civilian, who photographed and recorded cell phone video. The civilian's viewpoint was, you and your partners left the injured subject lying on the ground, handcuffed, and unattended. When you changed location to speak with the victim's mother, you and the supervisor did not obtain her contact information, or refused to provide an accurate account of her son's encounter with the police, or his condition. The report of the victim's death was broadcasted on both local and national media sites. The release of any digital evidence of you and your partner's actions will shed a bad light on the department and city of Memphis. Your on-duty conduct was unjustly, blatantly unprofessional, and unbecoming for a sworn public servant. Your actions place you in violation of DR 104 Personal Conduct. The DR 104 Personal Conduct Regulation is then included in the document. Your use of force behavior caused visible injuries to a nonviolent subject, who evaded officers on foot for a suspected traffic violation. You failed to recognize the victim's signs of distress, and failed to disclose viable information to the responding emergency personnel to render the proper medical attention. In your Garrity statement, you admitted you did not provide immediate medical aid, and walked away, and decontaminated yourself from chemical irritant spray. Your actions place you in violation of DR 120 Neglect of Duty. The DR 120 Neglect of Duty regulation is then included in the document. Page 12 is a continuance of the hearing summary form. It states: in your Garrity statement, you deployed your ASP baton and struck a nonviolent subject 3 times, and deployed your OC spray twice, because your partners were unable to handcuff him. Your actions were captured on video evidence. Although you did not assist with handcuffing the subject, your use of force behavior was excessive, unnecessary, and caused serious bodily injury. Your actions place you in violation of DR 301 Excessive Force, Unnecessary Force. The DR 301 Excessive Force, Unnecessary Force regulation is then included in the document. Your body-worn camera was activated during the initial interaction to apprehend the male subject, but later you removed your duty vest, and placed it on the trunk of an unmarked vehicle with the body-worn camera attached. Therefore, you did not keep your camera affixed to your body to capture the incident in its entirety. Your actions place you in violation of DR 101 Compliance with Regulations, to wit, BWC. The DR 101 Compliance with Regulations, BWC, is then included in the document. Page 13 is a continuance of the DR 101 Compliance with Regulations, BWC, and the OCU procedures. Page 14 is a continuance of the OCU procedures. It states: at the beginning of the administrative hearing, Lieutenant Cage Rosario informed the hearing officer that Officer Mills Jr. would like to waive his rights to have each charge read in detail. During the administrative hearing on January 20, 2023, Officer Desmond Mills Jr. was asked if he would like to make a statement by the hearing officer. Officer Mills Jr. responded, "No." Hearing officer asked Officer Mills Jr., "Did he give TBI an oral statement?" Officer Mills Jr. responded, "No." Hearing officer asked Officer Mills Jr., "Did he give TBI a written statement?" Officer Martin responded, "No." Note: I believe it was a clerical error naming Officer Martin instead of Officer Mills Jr. Lieutenant Cage Rosario, MPA representative, was asked if she would like to make a statement. Lieutenant Cage Rosario read a written statement which will be included in the administrative file. To whom it may concern, the Memphis Police Association, MPA, objects to the Memphis Police Department's decision to proceed with the administrative hearing for Officer Emmett Martin, prior to the conclusion of the administrative investigation, and/or TBI's investigation. Per Article 14, MOU between the MPA and the COM. A reasonable amount of time to review the statement of charges, including all proof to be relied upon by the hearing officer, is to be given to the representative prior to the administrative hearing. Upon review, several pieces of proof were either omitted from the file, or incomplete at this time. Body-worn camera video, which was referenced multiple times in the statement of charges, was not provided to the MPA representative, nor were statements from other principal and witness officers. These are only a few examples of the gross violations of this officer's right to due process. Not only is this a right under the MOU, but it is a right guaranteed by federal law. See Cleveland Board of Education v. Loudermill, 470 U.S. 532, 1985, where the court provided that a public employee with a property right to his or her employment must be provided. Note, again, I believe it was a clerical error naming Officer Emmett Martin, instead of Officer Desmond Mills Jr. Page 15 is a continuance of Lieutenant Cage Rosario written statement, and continues with the hearing summary form. It states, notice of charges against them, and a hearing to provide them with an opportunity to defend themselves against the charges against them. Additionally, that hearing must be a meaningful one. See Wagner v. City of Memphis, 971 F sub 308, WD Tennessee 1997. In Wagner, Mayor Harrington predetermined the outcome of the hearing, and the court said there was no due process. This will serve as the MPA's statement for this administrative hearing. In conclusion, the hearing officer carefully reviewed all documents related to each alleged violations of the listed DRS by Officer Mills Jr., including the garrity statements of all charged officers, and the response to resistance forms. The garrity statements made by you, and other charged officers are not consistent with each other, and are not consistent with the publicly known injuries and death of Mr. Nichols. Hearing officer additionally considered the statement made by Lieutenant Cage Rosario. Upon review of the evidence, as it relates to DR 104 personal conduct, which states in part, the conduct of each member, both on and off duty, is expected to be such that it will not reflect adversely on other members, the department, the City of Memphis, or the law enforcement profession. This regulation applies to both the professional and private conduct of all members. It includes not only all unlawful acts by members, but also acts which, although not unlawful in themselves, would violate either the law enforcement or civilian code of ethics, and would degrade or bring disrespect upon the member or the department. The hearing officer finds that Officer Desmond Mills Jr. did violate DR 104 personal conduct, therefore the charge is sustained and termination is ordered. Upon review of the evidence, as it relates to DR 120 neglect of duty, which states in part, each member, because of his or her rank and assignment, is required to perform certain duties and assume certain responsibilities. Failure to properly function in these areas constitutes neglect of duty. This regulation prohibits any omission or failure to act by any member of the department, whether on duty or off duty, when such action is required by the stated policy, goals, rules, regulations, orders, and directives of this department. It applies to any member who, through carelessness, inefficiency, or design, fails to implement the policy, goals, rules, regulations, orders, training, and directives of this department. The hearing officer finds that Officer Desmond Mills Jr. did violate DR 120 neglect of duty, therefore the charge's termination is ordered. Upon review of the evidence, as it relates to DR 301 excessive force, unnecessary force, which states in part, excessive force, unnecessary is defined as the amount of force which is beyond the need and circumstances of the particular event, or which is not justified in the light of all circumstances, as is the case of deadly force to protect property as contrasted with protecting life. Page 16 is a continuance of the DR 301 excessive force, unnecessary force. It states, the hearing officer finds that Officer Desmond Mills Jr. did violate DR 301 excessive force, unnecessary force, therefore the charge is sustained and termination is ordered. Upon review of the evidence, as it relates to DR 101 compliance with regulations, which states in part, disciplinary action may be taken for, but not limited to, violations of stated policy, rules, regulations, orders, or directives of the department. B. Use of BWC during the shift. 1. An officer shall at all times, during his/her shift have BWC equipment ready to record police interactions, with those they may encounter. This state of readiness includes having the BWC on, and in standby mode. Officers shall attempt to maintain a clear, level, and unobstructed forward-facing view. Officers shall attempt to keep the microphone portion of the device unobstructed in order to accurately record audio. The hearing officer finds that Officer Desmond Mills Jr. did violate DR 101 compliance with regulations to wit, BWC, therefore the charge is sustained and a 40-day suspension is ordered. DR 104 personal conduct, sustained and termination is ordered. DR 120 neglect of duty, sustained and termination is ordered. DR 301 excessive force, unnecessary force, sustained and termination is ordered. DR 101 compliance with regulations to wit, BWC, sustained and a 40-day suspension is ordered. Page 17 is Lieutenant Jessica Cage Rosario's written statement, which is included in the administrative file. We included the statement earlier in this video. Page 18 is a MPD memorandum about the hearing status to Assistant Chief Don Crow from the hearing officer, Deputy Chief Hardy, on January 20, 2023. It states: Assistant Chief Crow. On January 20, 2023, at 1705 hours. The administrative hearing for Officer Desmond Mills Jr., number 13678 was held. Deputy Chief Hardy number 3581 was the hearing officer. The charges for DR 104 personal conduct, DR 120 neglect of duty, DR 301 excessive force, unnecessary force were sustained and termination was ordered for all. The charges for DR 101 compliance with regulations to wit, BWC was sustained and a 40-day suspension is ordered. What we learned from the Officer Desmond Mills Jr. decertification documents, is that there was a civilian witness. And, the civilian witness took photos and cell phone video. We, also, learned that Officer Desmond Mills Jr. was one of the officers that went to Tyre's mother's home after the beating. The documents, also, confirms that Officer Desmond Mills Jr. lied to Tyre's mother. We, also, learned Officer Desmond Mills Jr.'s garrity statements were not consistent with the other charged officers, and not consistent with Tyre's injuries and death. The documents, also, confirms that it was Officer Desmond Mills Jr. that hit Tyre with a baton 3 times and deployed his OC spray twice. The documents, also, confirms that Officer Desmond Mills Jr. was sprayed with the OC spray that they were using on Tyre. The documents, also, confirms that Officer Desmond Mills Jr. failed to record the event in its entirety, on his body-worn camera uninterrupted. He removed his duty vest, and placed it on the trunk of an unmarked vehicle with the body-worn camera attached. We, also, learned that Officer Desmond Mills Jr. is not appealing his termination. Further, I find it ironic that Lieutenant Jessica Cage Rosario, MPA's, statement claims Officer Desmond Mills Jr.'s rights are being violated, when Officer Desmond Mills Jr. had no consideration for Tyre Nichols' rights, his civil rights, or even his right to life. If you find this video helpful, please like, share, and comment below the video. And, please subscribe so you don't miss decertification documents 2, Emmett Martin III, the Tyre Nichols case. And, check out the Tyre Nichols case playlist for more videos.